the willingness to be opened up by a joke and to find yourself implicated by the joke, I think is a way of challenging the social norms. The extraordinary thing about football for me, is the lived experience of the history of a team and how that relates to identity, to family, to who you are.
The decision to live or to die can be a rationally chosen decision. And I love how you talk about, for example, how our conceptual apparatus for suicide is outdated, and that maybe the focus should be system change instead of very much labeling things as mental illness. The main task of philosophy is to prepare us for death.
All right, so let's move it on for you then. I want to ask you about, I really enjoyed your book on humour.
Thank you.
And particularly the boundary, something which after reading, it's sort of like you've got a new piece of vocabulary. I could almost see it as I was going around. Your idea of the humour existing between the human-animal boundary and the kind of contradictions inherent in that. Just before we get into that, could you maybe try and sum that up as briefly and as clearly as possible as you can for our listeners?
Oh, the human-animal relation.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, the Humour book was written a long time ago, and I'm still happy with that one. It's because what I like to do philosophically is to hide things. So I try and write in a way that is accessible and free of jargon, and to have things kind of underneath the surface, so you can approach everybody understands what humor is. They think they know what a good joke is, what a bad joke is, and so on and so forth. So when it comes to humor, everyone's an expert. So it's a very good sort of stealth topic for introducing philosophical themes, and that's the first thing. And I like to keep a surface of the text being very clear, and then to have all of these larger philosophical themes sort of under the surface, but without them getting in the way of the clarity of the prose. And the idea is that humor, I guess, is humor is the mark of the eccentricity of human beings. So humor happens when we look at ourselves from outside ourselves, and we find ourselves ridiculous, and we laugh. So in a sense, the essence of humor is finding yourself ridiculous, and we are ridiculous creatures. Human beings are I think I say outlandish animals. I'm borrowing from a little remark that Wittgenstein makes somewhere, I think, about us being outlandish animals. So there's lots to say about that that humor is human. I mean, there's a whole tradition which begins with the Greeks that, it's only human beings laugh. And I try and tease that one out a little bit. It's, if you see a chimpanzee smiling, it might be laughing, or it might be about to attack you or sexually assault you or something. So the baring of teeth is often a sign of aggression rather than mirth. So humor is a kind of a mark of the human, but the mark of the human being sort of ridiculous, has not coincided with itself. And in relationship to animals, I mean, animals appear in, the history of literature. I mean, all over the place. Human beings, in a sense, being kind of there's an Animal Farm version of that. Human beings being sort of lower than animals, worse than animals. The view that Jonathan Swift has in Gulliver's Travels, that we are yahoos, and the rational animals are the quinims, which are thinking horses, and so on and so forth. So, but the key idea is really that we are. We do not coincide with ourselves. There's a wonderful German expression which I use in that book, as I remember, which is Ich bin, aber ich habe mich nicht. I am, but I do not have myself. So what human beings are is we are beings. We're alive. We're thinking and feeling, but we don't coincide with ourselves, right? And that not coinciding with yourself is the experience of self-consciousness, if you like. And that really happens, I think, most acutely in great comedy. In great comedy, you're forced to look outside yourself and find yourself ridiculous. And laughter, what's great about laughter is that if you can get people to laugh, you can open them up, and then you can hit them with some nasty, unpleasant truth about themselves.
I mean, it's brilliant how you talk about kind of almost watching the self or looking at the self, and then perhaps even making fun of the self. And Ollie and I, it's interesting because our humor is often we play characters, for example, perhaps overly intellectual characters, and we put on voices, and then we almost mock those characters that we play because perhaps some parts of us sees ourselves as sometimes too intellectual or so on and so forth. But I think this idea of self-consciousness within humor is really important, and I think obviously self-consciousness is something that, at least in my view, separates us from animals. As I was wondering, do you think when a monkey laughs, to what extent is that a really different kind of humor to what humans experience?
Yeah, well, we don't know. If a lion could talk, we would not understand him, as Wittgenstein says. So we don't know. They could be involved. There could be a whole kind of chimpanzee stand-up culture that we're not really because we're not really getting the act. I think if you look at the behavior of higher mammals like dolphins, it's clear that they're playing. It's clear that there's play as, another way of thinking about us, we're playful creatures, called Homo ludens, as the great Dutch ethnographer Housinger argued, that we're playful. And that extends beyond us. Animals play, cats play, but is humor confined to just us? I don't know. I mean, it's certainly in relation to philosophy. I mean, what particularly interests me is that I think that a lot of the things that we want philosophy to do to get us to step outside ourselves and question our presuppositions are things which happen in the hands of a really good stand-up comedian. Right? It's a kind of philosophical investigation, but it's one which is you're not intimidated or overawed by it because you know what's funny, right? And if it's funny, it's funny, and it's not. But a good stand-up comedian, someone like in Britain, someone like Stuart Lee, who's my favorite stand-up comedian. I mean, what he's doing in his long stand-up routines is a level of philosophical self-examination, which is extraordinary, and so I think it's often, So what interests me is that there are everyday practices that human beings engage in, like telling jokes, which have inherent philosophical content and value, and those things need to be examined more closely and not seen as some kind of non-serious minor issue. I think it's a really important thing. So can everyone do philosophy? Well, if people can laugh, if people can get jokes and laugh at themselves, in a sense, you've got them on the road to something philosophical.
Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying the episode. I just wanted to drop you in a word from our sponsor, Manscaped. You can use the discount code LOAF to get your discount, because even a lion needs to tame its mane.
Get the Performance Package 5.0 Ultra from Manscaped now. Stay fresh with no cuts, so that your baguette leaves no crumbs.